Stop. Before you scroll past this video, I need you to hear something that the mainstream coverage completely buried. For 4 months, the Nancy Guthrie case consumed headlines, candlelight vigils, press conferences, a grieving family standing in front of cameras, pleading for answers. And then almost overnight, the coverage just stopped. No arrest. No body. No closure. But here's what they didn't tell you. While the media moved on, investigators didn't. And what they quietly uncovered in the weeks that followed has completely rewritten the direction of this case. Because here's the question that nobody in the mainstream press is asking: what if the answer to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance was never somewhere far away, but just 4 miles down the road, hidden in plain sight? I'm going to walk you through the forensic evidence, the timeline inconsistencies, and the disturbing new theory that has quietly shifted this entire investigation from a stranger abduction to something far more intimate, far more calculated, and far more unsettling. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you changes everything. The night she vanished. Let's go back to the night of February 1st. Because if you want to understand where this investigation is heading, you need to feel the weight of what happened in those few hours. At 1:47 in the morning, someone approached Nancy Guthrie's Catalina Foothills home. Masked, armed, and with a single, deliberate motion, they disconnected the doorbell camera. Not damaged it. Not triggered it. Disconnected it. That's not panic. That's preparation. At 2:12 a.m., a ghost-like motion detection event. No image. No audio. Just a digital flicker that tells investigators someone or something passed through. And then at 2:28 a.m., the moment that sends chills through every detective who has reviewed this case. Nancy's pacemaker went silent. The Bluetooth signal that had been quietly broadcasting her heartbeat, her movement, her very existence, vanished. Just like she did. But here's what's been largely ignored in mainstream coverage: Nancy wasn't reported missing until the following afternoon. We're talking about a 4-hour void, a widow, alone, with a heart condition, and no emergency call until the sun had fully risen and afternoon had arrived. In missing persons cases, investigators are trained to watch those early hours like a hawk. Because the first people to raise the alarm are often the people who already know what happened. Now here's where the geography becomes critical. Annie's home, the property at the center of these explosive new rumors, sits just 4 miles from where Nancy disappeared. A quiet, 10-minute drive through residential Tucson. In the dead of night. When no one is watching. What the ground remembers: most people think that if you bury something, it disappears. The ground swallows it. The desert erases it. But forensic soil scientists will tell you something very different. The ground doesn't forget. It remembers everything. In Arizona's arid desert climate, forensic analysts can read disturbed earth like a book. They study compaction layers, the way soil settles differently after it's been moved than soil that's never been touched. They detect biological disruption, changes in root systems, insect activity, microbial patterns that signal something was buried beneath the surface. They even analyze moisture changes, because disturbed earth traps humidity differently than undisturbed ground. In short, if something was hidden in Annie's garden, the ground itself becomes a witness. But right now, investigators are facing a critical decision point. 2 completely separate paths, and which one they choose tells us everything about where this investigation is headed. Path A is concealment. Someone acted on impulse, or with extreme confidence, and chose a location they felt they could control. A private space. A familiar space. A space they believed would never be searched. Path B is staging. Someone deliberately planted evidence in Annie's garden, not to hide something, but to redirect suspicion onto the family. To make investigators look left, while the real answers lay somewhere else entirely. The difference between those 2 paths is the difference between a killer who panicked and a killer who planned. And then there's the digital trail. Because in 2024, your smartphone is a witness you can never fully silence. Step counters logging every footstep. Wi-Fi handshakes pinging every router you pass. Location metadata burned invisibly into every photo. Suspects who believe they moved through those early morning hours undetected are frequently, devastatingly wrong. Modern forensic digital analysis can reconstruct a 3 a.m. movement trail with startling precision, from data the suspect never even knew existed. Money, power, and the psychology of proximity. Now we need to talk about money. Because as uncomfortable as that conversation is, financial motive is one of the most consistently documented drivers in crimes involving people close to the victim. Unconfirmed public reports have circulated regarding pre-disappearance financial tension within Nancy Guthrie's immediate circle. Denied loan requests. A power of attorney executed in the months before she vanished. These are details investigators take extremely seriously, not as proof of anything, but as psychological context for what may have been building beneath the surface. But here's where criminal psychology gets genuinely fascinating and deeply disturbing. In financially motivated crimes, perpetrators almost universally seek distance from the evidence. They drive hours away. They use waterways. They find isolated desert terrain. Because every mile between themselves and the crime is another layer of protection. So why, if these garden rumors are true, would someone choose a location just 4 miles away? A private residential property that could be searched at any moment? The vast Sonoran Desert sits within easy reach. Why there? Criminal psychologists call it the shield of grief. The theory is as dark as it is compelling. If you are a grieving family member, publicly mourning, visibly devastated, there exists a psychological buffer zone around you. The public hesitates to suspect you. Investigators tread carefully, aware of the optics of aggressively scrutinizing someone in mourning. Media backs away from accusations. Hiding evidence close to home, under that shield of grief, is, in a perverse way, its own calculated form of protection. The audacity becomes the alibi. The proximity becomes camouflage. Now, to be completely clear, this theory does not prove anything. It is a framework that investigators use to understand motive and behavior. But it is a framework that, in this case, fits the geography of the unconfirmed rumors with an uncomfortable precision. What the sealed 9/11 recording contains: there is a piece of evidence sitting at the center of this investigation that the public has never heard. The sealed 911 audio from the afternoon Nancy was reported missing. Prosecutors lock emergency recordings like this for one specific reason: those early moments, the word choices, the emotional register, the details volunteered without being asked, are extraordinarily valuable in a courtroom. The way a caller describes what they found. What they say they were doing. What they claim not to know. These verbal snapshots, made before a person has had any time to construct a narrative, are often the most revealing statements they will ever make. And here's the prosecutorial strategy that makes this so critical: the pacemaker. Nancy's pacemaker didn't just monitor her heartbeat. It stored physiological data, movement patterns, heart rhythm fluctuations, timestamps. In cases like this, that internal device data can be cross-referenced against verbal statements made in that early 911 call, against vehicle GPS logs, against digital footprint records, to build a reconstruction of exactly what happened, and exactly when. If someone told investigators one version of events on that afternoon call, and the pacemaker's stored data tells a different story, that contradiction becomes one of the most powerful pieces of evidence a prosecutor can present to a jury. The sealed audio will not be released unless formal criminal charges are brought. But the fact that it remains sealed tells us that investigators believe it still has work to do. The question that changes everything: here's where I have to pause and be honest with you. None of what I've discussed today constitutes legal proof of anything. Suspicion is not guilt. Theory is not evidence. Unconfirmed rumors are, by definition, unverified. Before any public conclusion can responsibly be drawn, formal forensic verification, DNA analysis, and prosecutorial review must occur. That is not a disclaimer, that is how justice is supposed to work. But here is what I will leave you with. If the backyard excavation rumors are ever forensically verified, this case transforms. Completely and irreversibly. Because it stops being a mystery about what happened to Nancy Guthrie on the night of February 1st. The who, the how, the timeline, those questions become answerable almost immediately. The question that remains, the one that will haunt this case for years, is something far darker. Who knew the truth, and chose to stay silent? Because in a case like this, the killer rarely acts entirely alone. There are almost always people in proximity. People who saw something inconsistent. Who heard something that didn't make sense. Who noticed a behavior that was slightly, disturbingly off and convinced themselves it was nothing. If Nancy Guthrie's remains are ever found 4 miles from her home, in a private garden, beneath soil that forensic analysts will prove was disturbed, this case won't just be a murder investigation. It will be an accounting of everyone who looked away. That's the question I want you to sit with. Drop your analysis in the comments below, I read every single one. If you're new here, subscribe, because we cover every major development in this case the moment it breaks. And I'll see you in the next video.